If you didn't watch, they impeached me. I don't know if everybody knew that.
New developments in the saga of Attorney General Ken Paxton. As the civil case against him moves through the process, a North Texas senator wants to reopen the impeachment trial.
And now he files basically admitting that everything the whistleblowers claim is true, which means he's guilty.
We ask one of the top House investigators if that can even happen. Then the first proxy fight for control over the Texas House arrives. This week, a special election has those who want to expand the Republican Party.
They want Texas to stay red. They want us to unite. They want us to grow our party. And I am all about that.
Versus those who say the people in charge aren't conservative enough.
I'm going to stand for the principles first. I like to get along with everybody, but that's not my first priority.
That and much more right now on Lone Star Politics.
This is Lone Star Politics from NBC5 and the Dallas Morning News.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Phil Prazan from NBC5.
And I'm Gromer Jeffers, political writer with the Dallas Morning News. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is scheduled to be deposed in a whistleblower case this week. That ruling comes before a major development involving the historic Senate impeachment trial.
So back in September, the Texas Senate acquitted Attorney General Ken Paxton on bribery and abuse of power accusations. However, now two senators want to reopen the impeachment trial after a filing from Paxton's legal team. Now, to catch you up, Paxton fired top staffers after they reported concerns to the FBI a few years ago. The Texas Supreme Court ruled Paxton could be deposed under oath in that whistleblower lawsuit. That's when Paxton's office told a Travis County judge he will no longer contest the whistleblowers on the facts. One of the articles of impeachment senators acquitted Paxton on dealt with these very same accusations. Here's reaction from one of the whistleblowers, Blake Brickman.
Any first-year law student knows that a defendant in a case can't just say, hey, this is over. Sorry, I'm going home. I'm going to wash my hands of this. However much money you think the Texas taxpayers should pay, I'm fine with that.
So North Texas Senator Drew Springer wanted to reopen the case. Paxton responded to Springer, telling the Texas Tribune reporter Patrick Svitek that Springer has to leave the Senate because he was such a bad senator, wasn't going to get reelected, and needed a job. Why should anyone listen to his sour grapes? Austin Democrat Sarah Eckhart supports reopening the trial as well. She followed North Texas Republican Senator Drew Springer in a surprising turn of events. He wrote a letter to his colleagues wanting to explore a new trial. We spoke with Senator Springer, who did not hold back.
I think it's important that we always have the facts and the truth. And, when we were at the trial, I voted to acquit. I didn't think they raised to the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. I'd moved on from it, and I knew the court cases were going through. I'd sort of said it probably should have been in, the legal system rather than the political courts. But that being said, when the Attorney General files a statement with the court, basically saying, I don't contest any of the things that the whistleblowers now claim, and just tell me what we owe so I don't have to be deposed. That's an admission of guilt. You can go on and say, I was trying to settle. No, you can't tell the court, I admit to everything they're saying, and then say that you're not committing or not admitting that you're guilty.
Did you feel misled in that? Because in the impeachment trial, he was saying that these whistleblowers are not telling the truth. This is just not accurate. And here he is saying, well, maybe it is.
Absolutely. I felt misled. For months leading up to the case, we heard that there's nothing here. I want my day in court. I want to be able to tell my side of the story. The House didn't let me do that. He didn't take the stand during the trial. And but now, we're sitting here saying, but, his defense team laid out he wasn't guilty, hadn't done anything. And now he files basically admitting that everything the whistleblowers claim is true, which means he's guilty.
Senator, you read the coverage about Paxton, but even before the impeachment trial, you sat through the trial, a lot of evidence. I'm wondering, how close were you to voting to convict. Did that ever cross your mind?
It did. I was looking for really that smoking gun to raise to that standard. You thought you were getting there the whole time, and then it just didn't get to that. It just left enough doubt in your mind for myself, that I voted to acquit. And really that was the reason. I was happy to move on. I thought everybody else was moving on, and then, like I said, then you get the statement to the court saying, I admit everything the whistleblowers are saying, and I admit that I'm guilty.
And now let's hear from the vice chair of the General Investigating Committee who originally launched that Paxton impeachment effort, Ann Johnson, a Democrat from Houston. Chairwoman Johnson, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here on behalf of the General Investigating Committee.
So let's just start with your reaction to Senator Springer and Senator Eckhart, who kind of reinforced that comment of he wants to reopen the impeachment trial.
Well, I think we're dealing with an entirely new situation, and Senator Springer is right to raise some concerns and ask the Lieutenant Governor, because, again, we have seen Attorney General Ken Paxton attempt to use his office to avoid responsibility or having to go under oath and testify either about things that would open him up to criminal responsibility or to have to take the Fifth Amendment. And not only is he now acknowledging and saying that he has violated the whistleblower statute, but he again is asking Texas taxpayers to pay $3.3 million to try to shield him from effectively their day in court.
Representative Johnson, it appears to be two issues here. One, what's the likelihood of $3.3 million or whatever figure comes in that the legislature or the House will vote to pay that? And secondly, is there an appetite to go through another impeachment process? Is it possible? Are there double jeopardy concerns?
I don't believe there are any double jeopardy concerns because, again, this is not a judicial proceeding. It was a political trial. And Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick made that very clear when he said that it was going to be a political process. And Ken Paxton was given a political acquittal. But like any other sophisticated criminal, you can now see in real time how he is sweating the fact that in just mere days, he is being subjected to being put under oath in a judicial proceeding. And he seems like he has, over the last decade, to being doing anything possible to try to avoid that outcome. And when you ask about the funding, I mean, this is putting effectively the Senate right back where he had put the legislature a year ago. But it does add to that old proverb of you can't have your cake and eat it too. On one hand, he said he didn't violate the whistleblower statute. And now today he's acknowledging that not only did he do it, but that he's asking the legislature to effectively pay money to make the judicial proceeding go away so that it can shield him from the embarrassment of either having to disclose criminal conduct, at which puts him at risk, or taking the Fifth Amendment.
Representative, the House process received heavy criticism from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and other senators after the impeachment verdict was read. What's your message to Lieutenant Governor Patrick and those senators now who criticized the process?
Well, I think Senator Springer is the one that has just put this letter out asking the Lieutenant Governor for a response to what Ken Paxton is now asking. But my feelings have always lied with the whistleblowers. The whistleblowers have shown themselves to be true patriots and Republicans who, while we may disagree on policy issues, they took a stand that public integrity was more important than party. And so they are the ones that were thrown out and attempted to be discredited. And that is the proceeding that in the next few days, Ken Paxton is going to have to answer their questions without a political get-out-of-jail-free card. And he clearly is scared to death of having to face those gentlemen.
Representative Ann Johnson, Vice Chair of the General Investigating Committee in the Texas House, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we're taking an in-depth look at a special election runoff for Texas House District 2, east of DFW. Hear from the candidates looking to fill the seat by expelled Republican State Representative Brian Slayton from Royce City. And the latest round in the battle at the border between state and federal leaders. That's next when Lone Star Politics continues.
Texans will head to the polls this Tuesday to decide who will serve out the term for an East Texas seat. Republican Jill Dutton and Brent Money are in the runoff for the solidly red District 2. They were the top vote getters in a field of 6 in the special election.
Jill Dutton is the former president of the Republican Women of Van Zandt County, and Brent Money is a former city council member and lawyer from Greenville. I had a chance to speak with each of them this week. Jill Dutton, thanks for doing this. What do you think is the biggest difference between you and your opponent, Brent Money?
I would say the biggest difference is probably who is supporting us, who's backing us. I am supported by local elected officials, local leaders, by former Governor Rick Perry, who I actually campaigned for and worked for him as an intern on his last historic election as governor. I'm also supported by Congressman Lance Gooden, who I have fundraised for, and former Congressman Jeb Henserling, who I also fundraised for years. State Board of Education Chairman Kevin Ellis, and then various mayors, city council members, school board members. And it's interesting to note that I'm also supported and endorsed by Greenville Mayor Jerry Ransom, who my opponent grew up here.
When I asked him what the biggest difference is, he points to the fact that you have support from Texas for Lawsuit Reform, Associate Republican of Texas. In his view, he calls it the Austin Swamp. He's kind of framing you as being part of the status quo, that you go there and nothing will change in Austin. What do you think about that?
I think that's kind of an interesting perspective. While TLR and ART were very instrumental in turning Texas red. Texas was traditionally a Democrat state. They turned red in the 90s, and both of those organizations played a very big role in that. All of their donations and all of their supporters, they just want this state to stay conservative. They want.
You see it as a good thing.
I do see it as a good thing. All of their supporters and their donors, they want Texas to stay red. They want us to unite. They want us to grow our party, and I am all about that.
Immigration is an important issue across the whole state of Texas. Is there anything that the Texas House is not doing on immigration that you would like to see them do?
I would like to see us look at options to create a border agency. I think that that's just another tool in the toolbox that Governor Abbott could use. But another thing that I'd like to see the House take a look at, or the entire legislature take a look at, is defunding some of these non-governmental organizations that are providing incentives for the illegal immigration that draws them here.
For somebody who doesn't know, like what? What organizations?
Just some of the NGOs that are providing cell phones and food and transportation and things like that.
Service providers that would get state contracts? I don't know, because I'm just trying to think of what the state can actually do on those things. If they raise private money to help new immigrants, does the state have a role in doing anything about that?
Only if the state is providing state funds to them. And sometimes they have grants that they can apply for.
Brent Money, what's the biggest difference between you and Jill Dutton in this race?
I think that the biggest difference is this district is one of the most conservative districts in Texas, and they want a conservative fighter. I think they look down in Austin and say it's broken, it's not working for us. And when you look at my campaign, I'm endorsed by all the conservative fighters, Ted Cruz, Governor Abbott, Attorney General Paxton, and others. And her campaign has been funded almost entirely by the Austin status quo crowd, whether Austin Swamp, Austin Cartel, whatever you want to call it. And so you have really a contrast between a candidate who wants to go down there and change and a candidate that wants to go down there and keep things the same.
Well, yeah, when you say fighter, what does that look like in practice?
In practice, it means that I'm going to stand for the principles first. I like to get along with everybody, but that's not my first priority is to get along. My first priority is to do the will of the people that elect me and to uphold the principles that I believe from my Christian faith, from the Constitution. Those things are going to come before getting along with people.
So what do you feel like the Texas House is not doing that they should be doing?
Every representative would have said their top priority was border. I mean, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. We got to do something about the border. And it took until November in the fourth special session before we even had a vote on the House floor about the border. I think that's indicative of how broken the system is. And it's because we have competing interests about how that's done. And I believe a speaker who is trying to kowtow to maybe everybody or maybe just a smaller group, I don't know because I'm not there, but certainly not just saying these are the principles, we're going to drive toward this and get a solution for the people of Texas.
But is the product that came out of the Texas House on immigration, for example, or border security, is that up to par in your view, or is it just it took too long to get there?
I think both. I think we had a better bill in the original first session, HB 20. What we got was good. Why couldn't we have done that before? We waited until the last day to have a vote and debate, and then ran out of time. And that seems to be not just poor management. It seems to be a strategy.
They are coming here and they're getting jobs. Would you support E-Verify for all employers?
Yes, and I think we need to make sure. I'm very partial to small businesses. We don't want to have a system that creates a bunch of additional expense and burden on businesses. But it's a burden right now when you have, I have clients that are like, I'm hiring people the right way, I'm doing it legally, and I'm at a competitive disadvantage against people who are doing it illegally.
So you heard there, Brent Money criticized a lot of the major donors for Jill Dutton, but there was also a bit of a scandal earlier this year in that race because a group, Defend Texas Liberty, a major donor to many Republican candidates across the state, the president there met with a well-known white supremacist, Nick Fuentes. I asked Brent Money about that. He says, well, he doesn't have white supremacist views, so he's okay with accepting that money as kind of they're supporting him. He's not supporting them. But do you think voters care about that stuff?
If they hear about it, and that's the thing, if his opponent makes an issue of it, they're likely to hear about it. If not, then that's the trick, right? If they don't hear about it, they don't care. If they do hear about it, though, yeah, I mean, the fact that that group had to rebrand and change its name shows you that there's a problem with what happened. And his answer, well, I don't, believe in those views, but I'll still take their money. I don't know that voters will see that as a good position to have.
We will see what voters have to say about it here in the days ahead. It's a big year for Lone Star politics, from the U.S. Senate seat in Texas to so-called revenge efforts of both Governor Abbott and Attorney General Ken Paxton. There will be several races to watch closely. We'll continue to bring you interviews with the candidates here on Lone Star Politics, online at NBCDFW.com and our streaming channels. The latest move in the battle at the border, what it means for those trying to enter Texas by way of the Rio Grande when Lone Star Politics continues. There is another war of words between leaders from the state and leaders from the federal government. Again, it's over what's happening in the Rio Grande Valley. The Texas Department of Safety has been putting up razor wire to try to stop people crossing into Texas illegally. However, the United States Supreme Court ruled that in some cases, the U.S. Border Patrol can cut that wire fencing. That sparked off a reaction from Governor Abbott, who directed the state to return the razor wire fencing. Governor Abbott then rallied his Republican governor colleagues across the country to stand with him. It is unclear where that will go, but there are several other lawsuits headed to the Supreme Court on immigration. Earlier this month, Governor Abbott spoke on the radio show of right-wing conservative Dana Loesch. He said Texas is using every tool and strategy possible to stop people at the border. Here's what he said.
The only thing that we're not doing is we're not shooting people who come across the border because, of course, the Biden administration would charge us with murder.
He later defended that statement, saying he was just pointing out that the line would be drawn at doing something obviously illegal. Gromer, that's also just a snapshot of how serious apparently they are talking about this stuff.
Yeah, and I think if you asked him, he probably wishes he had that comment back, because the big criticism is the humanity of it all. That, you know, putting the razor wire up and the treatment of people crossing the border, even illegally, that they should be treated like people and not animals and things like that. So that's why I think he wishes he probably had that one back.
That's all the time we have. Stay tuned for Meet the Press with Kristen Welker. We'll see you back here next Sunday for more Lone Star Politics.